What's up, Tsla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big updates that came out involving Trump's tariffs that caused the stock market to bounce, what's happening with Tesla news, what you should be watching for in the charts for Tesla and the others going into tomorrow. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000 or more, and you're guaranteed 30, and the offer ends very soon at the end of March. Anyways, as far as Tesla is going, I just want to mention that we got a bit of a dip alongside the overall market. We saw Tesla dip in the morning before it got a bounce. We saw Nvda do the same thing. This thing dumped quite a bit, all the way down to about that 113 area before it tried to bounce. Same thing with SPY. It dumped all the way down to 590 before we saw some buyers defend it back up to 600. Same thing with the QQQ. It dumped and pumped. So what is going on with the markets? Why did the market do this? The first thing you have to remember is that we had some big news that came out, and let's review everything. So Donald Trump came out. He said he wants to impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and about 10% tariffs on China. So he said that at the end of last week. This caused the market to dump quite a bit. And the reason the market was starting to dip is because of this. The market realized that there would be some short-term negative effects of that. Okay, we'd see our GDP contract, higher inflation, factors just like that. And then in response to this, what else contributed to why the market was dipping was Canada. Justin Trudeau's Canada ended up coming out. They all came together and said that they wanted to increase tariffs on the US to 25% on particular goods, about $100 billion USD worth of them. So that was leading to this trade war, which led to a lot of fear and a lot of downside, right? But one of the things I mentioned in my videos is that tariffs could also be used for negotiation tactics and factors like that. And what happened was, with all this fear coming from these tariffs, the trade war, and everything like this, the market was dumping. We saw Tesla dump, SPY was dumping, and etc. But then Donald Trump began to negotiate with these different leaders from Mexico, from Canada, and so on and so forth. And the market saw a bounce because the tariffs got delayed. So it's a very, very big update. The tariffs are delayed. So what does this mean? What is going on? Let's go over this. So starting off with Mexico, there was some big news that came out. Trump was initially going to be increasing tariffs to 25% on Mexican goods, but then this changed, okay? Trump called President Claudia of Mexico. They came together, they negotiated, and they came up with the deal. And what happened was Donald Trump has announced that the tariffs are going to be paused for 30 days. They're going to be delayed for 30 days on Mexico if Mexico would agree on these particular terms. And Mexico agreed that they're going to reinforce their northern border with 10,000 members of the country's National Guard to address lots of issues. So, like I said before, guys, whether you like this or not, it's your choice. I respect that. I'm just laying out the facts for you guys. Because Mexico agreed to do this and they negotiated, now the tariffs have been delayed on Mexico for 30 days, for 1 month. And, Trump got what he wanted, at least for the time being. That is what made major headlines today. That's the first piece of news that caused Tesla and the markets to start to bounce. Then we had another piece of news, okay? Another big piece of news came out. We had Trump negotiating with Trudeau, Canada's prime minister, and they had another big announcement to make. So the news came out that Trudeau made the announcement that the US will suspend plans for 25% tariffs on Canadian goods for 30 days. It's also delayed in Canada. Trump confirmed a deal that came out that the tariffs are on hold. But why did this happen? What does this mean? So Donald Trump was threatening 25% tariffs on Canada. Okay, now he's saying it's going to be delayed for 1 month if Canada would agree to these terms. And Canada has agreed that they are going to essentially devote nearly 10,000 personnel to protect the border. They're doing this once again to deal with lots of issues. Whether it's good or bad news, it's up to you guys to decide if this was worth it. That's all on you guys. I'm not here to give you guys opinions on if it's good or bad. I'm just here to say that this is what the facts are. This is what the news headlines are saying, and this is what Trump basically has been getting done. So, with that being said, this does not put us in the clear. It does not mean that the Mexico and Canadian tariffs are canceled. This just means that they are delayed for 30 days. The market likes that because these short-term negative effects are not going to happen, at least for the next month. Obviously, that's a good piece of news for the markets. And with that being said, we'll have to see what happens. I also want to add that as Trump was using these for negotiations, There's no guarantee that tariffs are going to be 25% on Mexico or Canada. I know Trump was also planning 10% tariffs on petroleum and natural gas, but this could also be subjected to change as they negotiate. So that's the most important thing to remember. That's very, very important. So that being said, like I said before, we're not in the clear. The tariffs are not done with. They're just delayed for about a month. We'll see what happens as time goes on. But for now, the market has liked this news. That's why we saw Tesla dump initially with all the fear. While the market was dumping, the news came out that the tariffs were delayed in Mexico and then Canada. That's why the market got this big bounce. That's why Tesla bounced, Nvda bounced, SPY bounced back up to the 600s. So did the QQQ, which is currently in the 520s. That is why, guys, and I'm hoping we see a continuation to the upside after all this news. Now, another bearish catalyst for Tesla was this that came out. I want to talk about this news. We saw less cars registered in California in all four quarters of 2024, as sales are once again continuing to fall about 36%. Now, this is some very, very big news, right? We also saw them for specifically in the fourth quarter. They're down even more. They're also down 12% for the year so far, according to sources from Bloomberg. So, with that coming out, guys, the Model 3 sedan sales are dropping in California. Not the best of news for Tesla. Obviously, California is one of the largest states in the US, but there's many political reasons for why this is happening. The governor of California is Gavin Newsom. He's not really a fan of Musk, and things get very, very political. I'm not here to get involved in politics, but I just want to say that this was a little bit of a negative headline that was coming out. There was also this headline right here about how there was going to be even more politics getting involved with Elon Musk. We saw particular politicians from Canada proposing 100% tariffs on US-made Teslas in response to this, the news that was coming out. Obviously, this is going to be delayed if that were to even happen. It's not even a guarantee. I think that's kind of extreme, but if anything, because of the fact that the tariffs have been delayed, this is a good news for Tesla because once again, these different countries tend to be very political, especially when Tesla is involved, and that could lead to harder things for them. If you look at California policy, which hasn't been in Tesla's favor to a large extent, right? If you guys look at the new propositions that are coming out, same thing with Canada, they could have some negative views on Musk because of politics and factors like that. So that's part of why there's a little bit more fear for Tesla. So yes, Tesla got this big dip. A lot of this is priced in, and then Tesla started to bounce as a result of this. So I'm hoping we try to continue to bounce with the markets because of the fact that much of this fear is now subsiding, at least for the time being, as many of these tariffs are delayed. Now, news could change depending on what Trump says and factors like that. But for now, this is a little bit more bullish for Tesla and the markets. Now, for more news, just know that Guggenheim has maintained a sell rating for Tesla, so is UBS, but Cantor Fitzgerald, Piper Sandler, and then also Morgan Stanley have buy/neutral ratings on the stocks. That's a good piece of news, at least thus far. The price-price ratio went down a little bit. Tesla lost a little bit of strength compared to the markets. Hopefully, it tries to hold support. And Tuesdays are historically green about 51% of the time for Tesla. We tend to see more volatility at 11 o'clock a.m. and also 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so just keep that in mind. And then historically, just know that January tends to be a strong month, but February tends to be a weaker for Tesla historically. And then we tend to improve a lot more in like March than April during the next earnings historically. That's what tends to happen to Tesla in terms of its trends. So we'll see how things end up going. For more news, just know this. Tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. Just note that at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes after the stock market opens, we have the JOLTS job openings and job quits reports. Could lead to some volatility, so watch for volatility then. And then for earnings, today we just got Palantir announced their earnings. They absolutely crushed it, did very, very well. The share price is exploding. Tomorrow we have PayPal and Spotify announcing earnings, not to mention AMD, Alphabet, and Snap. Alphabet's going to be a big one tomorrow, so get ready. So will AMD be. It's the second biggest chip maker in the world. So get ready for all of this, guys. We're going to be watching to see what happens with Palantir. So far, they're very, very bullish. Okay, they had very, very strong earnings so far. Sales are expected to be $3.75 billion in 2025, above the expectation of $3.54 billion. And then we also saw their net income expected to be at $1.56 billion overall. Excuse me, guys. That is above expectations. So very strong guidance for 2025. For the fourth quarter, revenue is up 36% to about $827 million. That's bullish news above expectations of $776 million. And then their EPS or their profit is at about 14 cents per share, above expectations of 11 cents. They beat on EPS and revenue, they beat on earnings, they had strong guidance, and they're forging closer relationships with the US's military. So that's very, very bullish, if anything. And they're continuing to develop new technologies that are used across the military branches. So, with that being said, guys, they are very, very bullish. Very, very nice news that's come out. And Palantir is exploding into the 100s. Very, very bullish. The fear and greed index was at fear. It should get closer to neutral as the market has seen some fear subside. Momentum should also try to bounce a little bit to become less fearful. The put to call option ratio, as soon as we started seeing a lot of puts being bought, the market squeezed them. So it's very tricky how these market makers are playing the game. And the VIX, although it's up, it does have a gap to fill below. So we'll see if that suggests that there's more upside coming for the markets. With that being said, guys, what do I see for Tesla and the markets? It's very, very simple. One thing I want to say is that Tesla is technically a little bearish in terms of the overall trend. Okay, since December, it's been making lower highs. It's been holding these lows, but it's forming a giant bearish wedge. Now, this is a more like medium-term projection. For the short term, I do think this might try to bounce a little bit despite this, but just be careful because we might not surpass these highs for now. So if Tesla hypothetically loses 386 tomorrow, make sure you watch this 380 area. If that fails us, we could easily start dumping below 375 or lower for a much bigger dump. If we hold above 386, we're looking for a push back up towards the 394 area. If that breaks, we're looking for this gap fill back up towards the low 400s. My prediction is this for Tesla. We're trying to hold support. I'm hopeful that Tesla holds 386. As long as there's no bad news tomorrow, as long as we continue to push with the markets, there could be an attempt for Tesla to push for 394, then maybe touch the low 400s, make a move back down, just continue to consolidate like this. So this is like the trend I'm seeing on Tesla for now, kind of like a pump and dump. Overall, there's a downtrend on Tesla for the short, I would say like for like the more medium term, but for the long term, I'm a big bull. I think Tesla will go to the 500s, the 600s, and beyond. I hope that's as clear as possible. For now, there's a downtrend, but the long term is still very bullish. For now, look for a small rebound for tomorrow, most likely. We do love to push in the mornings. I hope Tesla tries to get back above 390. If we hold above that, we're looking for 394, then eventually that gap fill. But then we could slow down and maintain this wedge as time goes on. So please keep that in mind. That is likely going to be one of the most likely possibilities for Tesla. A nice push to fill this gap to the low 400s, then some consolidation. And then I also want to add that, even if the medium term is a little bearish for Tesla as we're making lower highs consistently, don't worry too much about it. This is going to create a really nice buying opportunity as the long term is still very, very bright. With that being said, guys, that's what I'm seeing for now. So please just know there might be a little rebound to fill this gap. As long as we get back above 394 to push for 400, then we could slow down as time goes on once we hit this upper trend line and consolidate for Tesla for now. How about for SPY? Well, one thing that's good about SPY is we're going to be watching the 600 area. If we hold above that, look for 601.5, break that, and we go up closer to like 604. If we lose 600, we're looking for 598 and 595 as our supports. So watch these levels. Once again, break 601.5, we're looking for the 604s. And then if we end up losing 598, we're looking for 595 as our target. Now, go back to SPY. Notice something very interesting. Look at the last couple of weeks. We bounced off support at 590, pushed up to 610, rejected, back down to 590, pushed back up to 610, back down to 590, back up we're going. So it's going back and forth for now. Very volatile markets. Because we're trying to hold above 600, I'm hoping we try to push a little bit more. We might try to get a little bit higher towards the low 600s for hopefully that 604 target. If we can't hold above that, we could turn back down again. So I just think we're going to pump and dump again, going back and forth between these levels. This may attempt to push a little bit higher. If we hold above 601.5, we're looking for 605 to 604. And if that breaks, I'm looking for 608 to 610, but then we could slow down after that. So watch for an attempt to get up to the 604s, then maybe even the 608 to 610 area. Then we could turn back down if that ends up failing. So watch that very, very closely and see which way we end up going from here. That's going to be very, very key for the way we continue to move. So keep that in mind. Look for more upside for SPY to get back above 601.5 or so before we start turning. What else is bullish is the QQQ may attempt to push as we're trying to hold above our key EMAs. Know that we have PayPal announcing earnings tomorrow, which could affect the markets. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think the chart looks more bullish. Look at the last couple of months on the QQQ, okay? We've been going back and forth between these levels for a while. As we hit the low 500s, we bounce. As we get close to about 530, we reject. And we've been going back and forth for the last couple of months. So in this case, as long as we're above 521 tomorrow, I'm looking for an attempt for essentially 525, then 528. Then we could reject and make a move back down from there if that ends up being the case. If we don't hold 521, we're looking for support at 518, then 515. My guts tells me as long as we're above 521, we should be trying to push for 525 or so or above. And then we'll see if we get a rejection here closer to 530. Might try to go a little bit higher. This does depend on PayPal's earnings, but for now, I do see some upside potential on the chart. Might try to go up to about 525, then eventually 530 before it comes back down. For the Russell, this needs to break past 226.5 to push for 228. This may attempt to push for the 226s, but then we could turn back down if that ends up failing. So tomorrow I do anticipate a test of 226.5. If we break this, we go a little bit higher before it turns back down towards these lower levels, such as 223. So watch for a push to 226, if not 228, then move back down most likely as we're in a range. We'll see which way we end up going just to be safe, so watch this very closely. For ES, we're in the middle right here. We're watching to see if we break and hold above 60.60. If we hold 60.60, we're looking for an attempt to get closer to 6,100. If we lose 60.36, we could be dumping back down towards lower levels such as 6,000. So it all depends on these levels. My gut is telling me this pushes for about 60.80, if not 6,100, back up to where this trend line is, and it moves back down towards the low 6,000 area. We're making lower highs here, and we have this range to watch for, so I think ES might be continuing to go back and forth. So look for more upside potential for the 6,100 zone, then it could be turning back down as time goes on. So watch that very, very closely. On NQ is going back and forth between supply and demand. If we could try to hold above 21,500, we're going to be looking for an attempt to push up to this imbalance at 21,750. If we end up losing support at 21,500, we could be dipping to about 21,300. My gut is telling me that this is going to be attempting to push a little higher towards this imbalance, depending on PayPal's earnings, for 21,755. And if that fails us, we could be turning back down. Like I said before, it's just going back and forth between 21 and 22,000, back and forth for the last couple of months. There's a good chance it tries to push higher for the 21,800 zone. Then we could turn back down from there. This depends on PayPal's earnings, but that's what I'm seeing for now. On Bitcoin, as long as we're above 101,000, I'm looking for an attempt to get 104,000. If we lose 99,979, we could be dipping back down to 97,000. I'm favoring upside, at least for the time being. For Nvda, we're trying to push higher. I like Nvidia's setup because it's holding 115 very, very nicely. If we lose 115, we're dumping back down closer to 112 than 110. As long as we're above 115, this is going to likely try to push for the 120 area, particularly 122. I hope we push for 122. If we break this, we'll look for 126. I think we revisit 122 towards our 20 EMA for now for a small bounce into the 120s on Nvidia. So watch for that very, very closely. Once again, for Tesla, as long as we're above 386, I'm looking for an attempt for 394. Then maybe this gap fill for 400 before it turns back down. If there's bad news and we lose 380, we will dump, but I favor upside a little bit more because of the fact that the market wants to bounce and because of the fact that the tariffs have been delayed. So I'm hoping we see a little bit more upside for Tesla. Some buyers may try to defend it temporarily before it comes back down. So watch that very, very closely. For Aapl, we have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. If we end up losing 226, we're looking for a dump to 223. Or I'm sorry, 222. If we're above 230, we're looking for an attempt for 233. My gut is telling me, depending on how earnings go tomorrow, this might be pushing for 233. Then we'll see if we get a rejection or not off that area to fill that gap. But I'm hoping that we get back above 230 and 233 as the most likely possibilities. With that being said, guys, I'm going to go through a speed run for the rest of these. I have limited time, so looking at starting off with Netflix, we're very flat right now. It is stuck between the 980s and 990s. I think we push for 990. We just consolidate for now like this as the most likely possibility before it tries to break out more towards 1000. Overall, it is more bullish as long as it holds support. MSTR is trying to hold this white trend line of support. As long as this holds, we may continue to uptrend back up towards these higher levels, slowly pushing up for the 360s, up to about 368. For Celsius, we're looking a bit more bullish. Unless we end up losing support at 23.5, I think we're favoring 24.6 and eventually 25 as our potential targets for a small bounce. For Supermicro, we're looking for an attempt to bounce with Nvidia. If we break past 30, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 31.8. If we end up losing 28, we could be dumping back down, but I'm favoring 30 as a potential target. Palantir is on fire, looking for, as long as it's above 100, this thing is doing fine. It's going to gap up huge tomorrow to around 100 or so. Looks very bullish to me after nice earnings. We're new to the 100s. It hasn't been there for a while. Actually, I don't think it's ever been there before, actually. So this could try to go higher. We'll see if this can maintain these levels. So watch that very, very closely. Rivian is in a range right here. We're technically in a falling wedge right now. So if we break out of this, we're looking for an attempt to get back above 13.02 to be bullish. If not, we may just continue to stay in this range. For SoFi, As long as we don't lose 15.14, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 16.13. And if that breaks, we're looking for the 17s essentially. So I favor the upside for the 16.13 area. For AMD, if we manage to break past 116.73, we're looking for 118.5 as our target. This depends on earnings, but I'm hoping we do see some upside because once again, I think earnings may be promising after so much downside. Right, the share price has been dumping on AMD for a while. If you look at the last couple of months, it's been on a big downtrend. I'm hoping they do well with earnings. I really hope so, and then we could be looking for a bounce. So we'll see just to be safe. ARM looks a bit more bullish as long as we don't end up losing 153. I'm favoring a push for essentially 160 to 166. Coin looks a bit more bullish as long as it does not lose 286. It could be pushing for the 290s tomorrow for a small rebound. Amazon looks bullish. It looks like it's going to be testing 240. If that breaks, I'm looking for 242, then 245. Why? Because we have earnings in a couple of days, and there might be some buyers that defend it for 240. As long as Meta's above 700, we're looking for essentially 710 as our target. There is upside potential in it. Microsoft looks a bit more bullish as long as we don't end up losing 410. This might slowly try to inch its way up to about 415. Earnings were honestly not bad. They just had like one of the revenue segments that were not doing as well. So we'll see if this tries to get a rebound, especially because of the fact that tariffs have been delayed. I hope we try to get back above the 412 area to bounce more. Google looks bullish, going to be looking for an attempt for 206 to 208. There might be some more buyers that defend it. GameStop may try to push back up to fill this gap around 26.8. AMC may try to push back up to about 3.18. DJT may try to push for about 31.5 for a small bounce, but it's going to be very flat for the most part. The VIX is pushing, but it might dip to fill this gap, which tends to favor upside for the markets. The 10 years on a bit of a downtrend ever since Jerome Powell gave his speech. So this tends to be a little better for the markets, and the dollar is dumping, which tends to be bullish for the markets as well. So I'll be watching the dollar maybe dip a little bit more towards at least the low 108s, which tends to be bullish for the markets. So we'll see how things end up going. With that being said, guys, I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Just know that the market right now is looking a bit more bullish. Might be a small bounce coming. I do hope that Tesla tries to follow the trend. I lean a little bit more in favor of that because even though we closed below our 200 EMA, we are seeing buyers defending it right now. So I hope we hold above 386 tomorrow to start pushing higher. If we don't, there could be bad news that causes it not to. I lean a bit more in favor of trying to push for 394 to try to fill that gap, but we'll see just to be safe. Right? New tariff news could come out at any given moment. So that's why I can't always predict everything perfectly. I'm hoping that buyers defend this and we try to see some upside for Tesla to try to fill this gap as the most likely possibility. Thank you for listening, guys. That's it for this one. Have a good one. I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open for another update. Until then, have a good day and peace out.